But let me just step back for a minute, and if you reflect on what you've heard last night, for those of you that were with us and those that have been with us throughout the day, let me suggest perhaps that there's three overarching themes that have been part of what we've been talking about. One is holistic transformation, one is business solutions to poverty, and what is all around innovation and going where others aren't. And that seems to be the calling that Opportunity has in hitting all of those things. We didn't say in the film, and probably should have, that Nicaragua is the second poorest country in this hemisphere. Haiti is first, Nicaragua is second. So it is one of the more difficult and challenging places for us to go. What we're here to talk about today, and I'm delighted to have David Almond, the chair of Nicaragua and the visionary person behind getting this initiative launched, is something that we call an asset-based community economic development model. And what I'd like to do is have David sort of help us understand those themes of holistic transformation as well as sort of innovation and working in tough places using business solutions. So David, maybe just to get us started, can you share a little bit about why you and Donna have been involved in Opportunity? And from your experience, what's different about Opportunity's approach to combating poverty?
Thank you, Dave. Good to be with you all today. Back when my wife Donna and I first got exposed to Opportunity International, we'd seen pictures, we knew poverty was out there, but it brought us closer to the reality. And when you're confronted with the statistics, 2/3 of the world's population or something like that lives under $4 a day or less, it's hard not to respond in some way. It's hard not to try to do something to do that, particularly if you're motivated by your faith. Then when an organization comes along and gives you an option, an availability to engage in some way, like Opportunity did, then to me it was, if you don't respond once you've been given both the knowledge and the opportunity to respond, then I think we felt like there'd be a big hole in our gospel if we didn't try and do something. So after we liked what Opportunity was doing, and then kind of as an outgrowth of some of the work I'd been involved in urban Atlanta, trying to revitalize blighted neighborhoods, the idea came up to maybe launch a pilot project in Nicaragua, which would be a holistic model working with the microfinance clients of Opportunity. So I think from a model perspective and what's distinctive, as was stated earlier by David Gardner, one of the David Gardners, the Einstein quote that poverty is complex and we should respond with that reality in mind. And so we've heard several times about a holistic approach to that, and so we very much embrace that, and that's what guides us. Our vision is to establish communities where families flourish and the shalom of God is present, and our mission is the economic, spiritual, and social transformation of the poor, their families, and the communities in which they live. So it starts with this holistic model, and you heard a lot about this morning and even this afternoon about extreme poverty. I would say our model goes beyond the extreme poverty and says we want to, as our goal, we want flourishing, we want thriving, not just survival. And you would expect that when you start talking about what in a given country would constitute a middle class income. That's where we want to set our sights. And it certainly takes, to bridge the gap between the haves who are way up here, particularly in developing countries. You have this kind of barbell where you have a lot of people that are the working poor, a lot of them microcredit clients. You've got usually a dozen or two families that control the big wealth in the country, and there's a big missing middle. And we want to be part of the solution, leading with economic development. that creates a holistic transformation. And there are a lot of things that happen at a community level that are important to the well-being of not just the community, but the families in it. I mean, when you think about schools or healthcare, infrastructure, those are the type of projects that really do take community engagement. You know, we're more than, we're not created as primarily as economic beings. We're also social beings made for community and spiritual beings.
Thanks, David. And you've talked about economic development there. We've talked about business solutions. And for those, most of the room has not been to Nicaragua yet. So could you spell out a little bit more, what's a business solution? What do we mean in Nicaragua when we say it's a business solution to economic development?
Well, as you heard today, the greatest felt need of the poor is jobs. So it's about jobs, it's about business solutions. And we, you know, one of our strategies there is to base it upon the assets of the people in the community. In other words, nobody wants to be defined by their deficiencies or what they're needing or what they're lacking. And everybody has value, everybody have assets. So we do what we call asset inventories to determine what skill sets, what resources may be available in a community. In Nicaragua, 70% of the rural poor do some form of agriculture. You've got rich volcanic soil in the area. So obviously, playing off the assets of what the people have been doing for long periods of time makes a lot of sense. So we combine that with what we call economic scans to determine where the growth opportunities in a country may be, and where that led us in Nicaragua is to focus on the two industries you heard mentioned, agriculture and tourism. Then we go beyond that and we say, okay, where can we identify value add opportunities and begin to look at value change. You know, how do we get the poor smallholder rural farmer to move up the value chain? You know, again, our goal is to make these subsistence smallholder farmers middle class farmers. So, you know, we're looking to establish not just the micro enterprises, but the small and medium enterprises that bridge this gap between these very large businesses and these very small businesses. I think another theme that we target in our work is when you think of the capital stack, we look at not just grant money and not just loan projects, but we look at investment capital. To get flourishing to occur, there needs to be investment. You heard the teach a man to fish, and David's analogy, what about the fish markets? The way we would describe it is the pond needs to become a wealth-creating asset for the community. You know, to really create stable, better-paying, middle-class jobs, you've got to have wealth-creating assets in the community. So we focus on those type of businesses. And you know, the poor are isolated in a lot of ways. They have a survival mindset often. They're in silos. They're isolated from capital. They're isolated from market information, from good technology. So, you know, we want to be a facilitator to connect them, to give them access to those different products. So, so what does that look like in agriculture? We have, as we want to bring these people along, we have what we call a field to market strategy. This would basically mean that we facilitate farm loans, we facilitate technical assistance, we have agronomists on our staff. And that deals with better seed varieties, you know, how to use fertilizers, insecticides, how to harvest correctly, and they need facilitation getting their crop to the market. You know, one of the crops that is a staple in Latin America and actually in Africa and the Far East as well is a crop called yucca. We were attracted to it because it is somewhat drought resistant. It is a staple that the poor farmers are accustomed to growing, but it also has many diversified uses. It can be used as starches and flours and industrial uses, and anything from animal feed to human grade consumption. to adhesive and industrial applications. So it's a big market, and it's a product you can add value to. So this led us to the processing to, again, help the farmers up this value chain to create a manufacturing product that we could then sell to local, regional, and international markets. Typically, the poor are confined to selling their product, which is usually very perishable, in the local market. It's a very low-cost, high, rapidly spoiling commodity, and dumping often occurs, and the pricing, of course, is very poor. By bringing them into the value chain and opening up, connecting these very poorest of farmers to the global international buyers, we can really make a huge difference. So, what does that look like? What are the results of that? Well, yields can over 2 or 3 years' time with good agronomy, yields can double or triple. In addition, the grade of the product that they grow is better. So if you're dealing with grades of yucca, they grow more A, they grow more B, and they grow less C. So it's a more valuable product. And of course, as you've heard, what do they do with the monies that they get from these yields and higher prices? And of course, having processing where we're a stable buyer, so they're not dealing with market fluctuations because we can process it and we have global markets that we can sell to. So it's not just better price, it's also more stable, reliable buyers that they can count upon. So what are the results? Well, obviously the incomes, you've heard it, it's clothing, it's food, it's education, it's improvement to housing, the things that you've heard a lot. But also what we see a lot of with these farmers is them reinvesting in their businesses. They may take on more land, they may, to further enhance incomes, they may invest in a truck and use that as another little small business that they can charge the other farmers. But they're very industrious. Once you give them hope for a better future, you really see their creative side, their industry show up, and it's a split between improved quality of life but reinvesting to make more income.
So David, thanks. It's really helpful, and having been there, you may have seen I had the joy of being there to cut the ribbon when we did the grand opening for the technical high school. So it was really fun to see the investment that community had. And one of the things that touched me most personally, and I want to hear a little bit more from you on the holistic approach, is that we can think we're there to serve, but that we're giving something, but so often what we're doing is that we're receiving a benefit. And the parents in that community, when we were there with that high school, they came and they had a plaque that they were dedicating to opportunity to thank us for partnering with them. And it really touched those of us that were down there to see the amount of stakeholder engagement. We weren't giving them something, we were creating a partnership with them. So could you expand just a little bit on what that sort of holistic transformation piece looks like, and what have you seen over the many years, the decade now that you've been going down there around changes in clients' lives because of this?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. As we said, poverty is complex, and you would expect a somewhat complex solution to alleviate it, and we're not just or primarily economic beings. So, we're made to be in community. A lot of transformation occurs at the community level. Obviously, we're spiritual beings. What does that look like? So, when we talk about spiritual formation, we talk a lot about hope and reconciliation. Again, the poor isolated, typically their experiences, they have not had any rationale for being hopeful because that hope cannot be realized. When you come along and partner with them, then hope takes on a different dimension and they become hopeful and aspirational. And to give you an example of that, one of the communities in which we work, we asked them, what is the greatest need? What do y'all want if you could have it that you don't now have? And the answer across the board was water. They had not had water, potable water, for many, many years. And you'd ask a mother, what would having water mean to you? And one mother responded by saying, I want my children to know what it feels like to be clean. So, excuse me, but But we start working with the community, and there was history here. You had a group of older men who had attempted to bring water to the community and basically had failed. And there was some question about whether they had misappropriated dollars and the like. On the other hand, you had a bunch of younger women who had been in a trust group together, had been in several cycles of loans, very industrious, very ambitious, very responsible group of women that were really pointing the finger at these older men. Well, as we get into it, there's this tension here, and what we find out as we get into it a little bit more is, well, the leader of the women, she is a Sandinista. And we find out that, and she's also a Catholic. The leader of the older men, he's a liberale, and he's an evangelical. And so you're really dealing with, you think about it, this political, religious, age, gender divide, and there is significant tension in this. But the need, the desire to bring water to this community got them to work together really in a meaningful way for the first time. And at the end of that process, not only did they have water for the first time in many, many years, but you had deep, deep reconciliation occurring. If you look at Don Bloss, who you saw in there, and you saw Anita, who was kind of the head of the women's group, instead of being antagonists, now there is a deep, deep fondness among them. And not only is there fondness there, but now, having worked together on one project, then they become aspirational to say, what can we now do together next? And so they took on a road project together. Now they were empowered. They're ready to, they were asking us how we could help. They were asking the municipality what they can contribute to the road. All of a sudden, they were unified, they were powerful, and over a couple of 3 short years, we could see a dramatic transformation in how these whole community dynamics changed, how reconciliation took place, and this was a different community. When we talk about community work, the infrastructure like schools and education and healthcare and the like, they have a lot to do with well-being. It's one of the reasons that, when we were down there and we realized, we're there about creating small, medium enterprises, but we also realized we need to train the next generation to be able to take advantage of these new created job opportunities. This kind of was where the idea for the school was birthed. So we started 4 years ago, entrepreneurial technical high school, which you saw in the film, they do a practicum. Our goal there is to have them, be the best employees, be ready, be job ready upon graduation. And just give you one brief story there. We had a young man, Roger, and we didn't have a lot of time to get our first class. We made a decision. We had to build facilities. We had to hire principals and teachers, and we had to recruit our first class. So it was like it was pretty low threshold if you wanted to, matriculate at our school. Well, we had one young man who had actually been kicked out of the public school system of Managua, and if you knew how bad their education system was, you'd say, what in the world could he have done to get kicked out of the public school system? Well, we rejected him, and soon after that, his mother showed up and said, please take my son. He needs this. And so we took him on provisional basis. And lo and behold, 2 months later, he's elected class president. He's thriving. David Cohn, who's our executive director, which many of you have met, and if you haven't, you need to. David and the team, they're working on business plans. Our students there work on very real business plans, surprisingly good business plans. And Roger now, he's working with a group of students. He'll graduate in a year, and he's already got his business plan, the outline of his business plan, that he's going to want us to help fund to crank that up. And as the people that visited down there this week, these are well-disciplined, hard-working, smiling-faced young people that they know they have a future. And when we started this out, we were thinking jobs. A lot of these are first-generation high school grads in their families. But you'll show up one time, and there'll be a band there playing you, kind of welcome you when you arrive. That wasn't that wasn't on our school plan when we started. You know, I walked one of the more recent times I was down there. I saw a couple of young boys playing chess, talked to them. They were preparing for a chess tournament. I was thinking, you know, wow, here in rural Nicaragua, it's just like our children, just like our parents, just as ambitious for their futures as we are with ours, excuse me.
Yeah.
So integrating the community, the spiritual, with the economic is a big part of how we think you accomplish transformation.
Well, David, I think your heart is showing, is what we're seeing. I just want to make sure everybody knows who DK is. So DK, we keep referring to you. I want to make sure that between David and DK, as we have time throughout the reception today, please make sure that you talk with them. Just ask them, why should I come to Nicaragua? And see if we can't get you scheduled to get down there if you haven't yet been. So will you join me in thanking David and DK for their fabulous work?